Well, the Register finally decided to cover the big fork of Xorg, XLibre. We've been covering the Lunduke Journal for a couple of days now, so I'm not going to repeat everything, but Xorg got forked. Open source display server gets forked. That's the core of it. And there's been a bunch of controversy surrounding it, mostly because companies like Red Hat and Free Desktop and the Xorg org Foundation have been working to silence and censor and suppress anything related to this fork and to the original display server, which is absolutely fascinating. It's a crazy story. But the Register had been quiet on it. They hadn't covered it at all. I think they felt that they finally had to, right? Everyone has been talking about the story. It's been spreading throughout the open source world, and the Lunduke Journal has been the primary source of information on all of it, and the Register can't have that, right? So they have to finally cover it in some way. But here's what's nuts. Over, I'd say, 50%, maybe a little bit more of the article that the Register published about this fork of an open source display server is about virtue signaling. Just the Register virtue signaling that how great they are. They're virtue signaling about DEI and climate justice and vaccines and social justice and all just on and on and on. And what makes it really, really ridiculous, what's probably the most horrible thing, is not the over-the-top virtue signaling. What's really bad about this is that despite this article mostly being an excuse to virtue signal, because that signal is not going to, that virtue is not going to signal itself. It's still one of the better articles that the Register's written in a long time. It really is. If you scoop out, I don't know, half of the article, what's left is short, but it actually has some decent information and is not the worst writing in the world. And I feel like this is just one of those great examples of what's happening within the tech journalism world, is the rare times that they actually cover the story, and most of the times they don't. I mean, if you look at all the big stories that the Lunduke Journal has broken, and you're like, oh, I wonder what the Register thinks about them. They don't talk about them. Right? If you go through all the big leaks from all the big companies, no. The Register is just going to keep those quiet. They're not going to say anything, because if they say anything, they lose all their money because they're paid for by big tech. But this article has some crazy juicy tidbits. I'm going to read a few bits to you because it's insane. The headline is "Forked Off XLibre Tells Wayland Display Protocol to DEI in a Fire." That's kind of witty. Project to modernize the Xorg X11 server seems to actively court controversy. Ooh. We last mentioned Vigelt's work, so the developer who forked the project to fork Xorg into XLibre, his name is Enrico Vigelt, work on improving Xorg multi-monitor support about a year ago. However, this was not his first appearance in the pages of the Register. Back in 2021, Linus Torvalds rebuked him for spreading pseudo-scientific anti-vaccination claims. Okay, I just have to stop for a second here, because before we even get into the meat and potatoes of the piece of software that's forked and the very technical and practical reasons for the fork, they immediately jump to what they perceive as character assassination, right? They see, oh my gosh, did you see this man? He questioned a specific vaccine and said, this specific vaccine, I have questions about it. He's pseudo-scientific anti-vaxxer. He must be evil, right? Immediately jump to character assassination. That's what they do. That's what they do. They don't have great practical things to back up whatever argument they want to make. So boom, character assassination. Good job, the Register. They go on to mention, to quote, that the XLibre fork is, quote, explicitly free of any DEI, diversity, equity, or inclusion, or similar discriminatory policies, end quote. And that is true. XLibre is decidedly not going to be discriminatory, unlike many other projects, including free desktop and Xorg related projects. They are purposefully discriminatory. They talk openly about how they discriminate against people, right? And they use phrases like DEI to say, oh, we're not being discriminatory, we're just being quietly discriminatory. That's how they do it. So how does the Register respond? Oh dear, they said. That statement has received praise and approval in some places. Oh, and so they're saying, oh, that statement though, that's received praise and approval in some places. They mean me. Instead of saying Lunduke, I know they follow along with what I publish. I know they do. And instead of saying Lunduke, they just say some places, because you can't say the word Lunduke out loud. They go on to say this vulture is conflicted, because they refer to themselves as the vulture. We deplore anti-vaxxer and other anti-science disinformation. Vaccines don't cause autism, they cause adults. God. To start with, none of this fork has anything to do with vaccinations. Any vaccination at all. There's not one mention in any documentation, in any announcements, in any coverage of vaccinations. But the Register is like, we've got to talk about vaccines somehow. No one mentioned autism. No one mentioned autism or adults. Also, vaccines don't cause adults. That's a weird random thing to say. That's just, they're unrelated things. Apples cause semi-trucks. Like, you're just saying random words now. I continue. Quote, climate change is real. Social justice is a good thing, and we are enthusiastically in favor of diversity, equity, and inclusion. End quote. No one mentioned climate change. No one mentioned social justice. That was not even brought up. That wasn't brought up by the developer, Enrico Vigalt. That wasn't brought up by me. That wasn't brought up, as far as I could tell, by anybody at all. That's not part of this. We're talking about developing a piece of open source software, an open source display server. And the Register is like, well, have you heard about climate change? Have you heard about social justice? There's people that say vaccines are caused by autism. Therefore, we shouldn't use your open source display server fork. This is nonsense. It's nonsense and gobbledygook, and it's just a bunch of virtue signaling. The Register's trying to earn praise from the tiny section, the little niche of crazy people that have been actively destroying the world of open source software. And it's stupid, is what it is. It's just straight up stupid. Anyway, I had to read some of that to you. I linked to it. If you go to the Register and check it out, I mean, it's again, it has a few tidbits in it that are worth looking at, but it's not great coverage. But if you got rid of all the DEI, climate justice, vaccine promotionally stuff, there's at least the beginnings of a decent article here. So clearly the writers at the Register could pump out decent tech journalism. I think it's possible. They just have to stop being crazy virtue signaling all the time to do it. And what's really nuts is there's very little quality coverage of this topic happening, and there's no real good coverage of the discrimination that's happening here. What I would like to say, and I want to give the Register a little bit of praise here, because I was just very harsh on them, but the Register they were being honest in discussing the fact that Free Desktop and Xorg were actively silencing, suppressing, and banning people related to this project, trying to suppress the project. And you can, in the wording of it, you can see that they were almost begrudging that they had to tell you that yes, the claims that there was censorship are actually true. As far as we are able to see, the statement that his GitLab accounts have been deleted is true, and that's as far as they're willing to go. But at least they were willing to admit the truth there, which is a big start. They left out who did this deleting. They left out the massive scale of the censorship. They left out the involvement of Red Hat employees. They left all of that out. But they started to tell the truth after they put a page of climate justice in front of you. Thank you to the Lunduke Journal subscribers for going to lunduke.com and subscribing. You make this possible. You make it so that I can talk about Red Hat openly without fear of them pulling away the advertising funds, because I don't take any advertising funds from anybody. You guys make all of this possible. So thank you for keeping tech journalism alive. I couldn't do it without you. Lunduke.com. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, nerds and nerdettes, across the vast and glorious intertube of ours, I do declare end broadcast.